My time in the US has come to an end, and within the next few days, I'll clean up my apartment and go back home after 6 months. I don't think I personally have a specific regret, and I'm not entirely happy nor entirely sad because I think there are opportunities everywhere, but just in different forms. And this is going to be the topic of the video about opportunity in different forms. For example, the opportunity to rectify your friendship, the opportunity to become a better person, the opportunity to become reliable in workplace, all those personal opportunities. I arrived here on October 9th, and this was my first time living abroad. I came here with my roommate, who I've been good friends with already for a few years, so we could help each other. But it kind of reminds me of my high school time when I realized some of the knowledge that I acquired here will be naturally obsolete in the next stage of my life if I do not try my best to catalyze them. So then I was trying my best to catalyze everything. Another reason I think I feel special about this is because I think there has been this constant spiral of working and growing up and the internal, external pressure given to me when I was in Korea. It was continual and unending because I've lived there forever. But while I have been here, I think I could just put that aside. And some might say it's because there's so much pressure in Korea, but no, I strongly disagree with the idea that people in other countries somehow magically do not feel any pressure to find their place in the world, as if they're somehow so privileged to do whatever they feel like and magically land in a utopia. But, anyways, temporarily, I have stayed abroad and it was very refreshing because I could present the fact that I'm in the US as an excuse to my status quo. I mean, for sure, I did my best. I think I did 95%. I don't think it is much different than what it would have been if I just stayed in Korea, but there is opportunity cost, and I feel like I could have done 140%, 150%. But, anyways, this time I wanted to take some time and catalyze what I've experienced in the US. I just felt like it'd be easier for me to do it right now so that I can focus on wrapping up everything in the next few days. I think the first is certainly the adaptation issue, and I think anybody would experience it when they live abroad, and for sure there's something to it. For example, the notion of food we have can be very limited. Imagine you only grow up in Korea like me, then the food you have access to in Korea becomes the entirety of food, and you have wired your brain around the satiation of eating food, which is basically eating Korean food. So if you move to a different place, the concept has to change. And imagine you grew up in your entire life in Korea, so some characteristics are shared among your peers, and there is some universal bias in your human interaction in a very certain way. So you can imagine people are more direct or indirect. And when you go abroad, you become friends with people from everywhere. And it's weird because not only are you foreign to them, they are also foreign to you. But the food part is funny because when you eat the food, you're full, but still you feel like something is missing. And I think American food is generally aggressively saltier until you get used to it. So when I first arrived here, my roommate and I went to Walmart to buy this small memory foam to get this basic bedding set up. And on the way back, we bought this pizza that was so recommended. And when we first took a bite, it was so salty. And we just stared at each other and we just started laughing like mad because it was just so absurdly salty. So I can understand why when people come to Korea, they say Korean food is so sweet because there's this touch of sweetness in every Korean food. Anyways, going back to the story, I think if you're from a different country and you want to reproduce the food, there is certainly the difference. For sure, there's the converging effect in some sense because there are Michelin stars all over the world. But I think The type of vegetables is slightly different, and that slightness, when accumulated, makes a big difference. And even the instant noodles taste very different. I think they're missing some ingredients. It doesn't have the aftertaste, it doesn't have these layers of flavors. And it also reminded me of the time when I was in Korea. There was a bunch of Indian students who cooked their food all the time, and I can understand the longing, let's say, the neurological fixation. It's not just the taste, but it's the entire mechanism behind the flavor. To comment more about the food, I want to spend more time talking about this amount of chemicals and the amount of medication average Americans are exposed to. I think this is the perspective worth listening to, because I think America is basically the country of immigrants. So all people from all over the world gather here, but it doesn't seem necessarily that their health gets better after a generation or two. I was talking to a pharmacist randomly, and she said she doesn't trust the American food system. I think people like Brian Johnson or RFK Jr. are very interesting in this case, because they do point out how average Americans are obese, and say how Americans take more medication more than all other countries. And even further, they say that food is toxic until proven innocent. So this comes down to the amount of the chemicals and the quality of chemicals and additives in the food. And I think there's some interesting speculation. I think in the US, a lot of medication is over the counter, and they're so normalized, and they can be accessed without a prescription. Like, for example, melatonin. It's illegal to take melatonin in Korea without prescription, but here you get 5 milligram, 10 milligram, all sorts of melatonin at the store. I'm not saying melatonin is specifically harmful, but I'm saying the regulation seems lighter in the US, and there will certainly be normalization of medication that can be longitudinally harmful. Also, somehow I hear this very frequently from Americans, that Korean food in America is alleged to be better than Korean food in Korea. And I can tell you that no one Korean even slightly agrees with this. And even if we grant it, the price will be so different that the comparison will be meaningless. So I'm looking forward to having that cheap but high quality dish where if it says a number on the menu, it is what is taken from the wallet, not additional tax or tip 30%. And there's a water that contains calcium carbonate, in my opinion, so when it dries up, it leaves these white spots. Another point to make is about the public transportation. I'm a very big fan of public transportation, and I enjoy trying different public transportations in different countries, because I think it strongly affects the quality of life of the general working class public. And I have to say, I really like the culture where you take the bus, you say hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the bus driver. And when you leave, you say thank you. And the driver responds, you're welcome, or have a great day to everyone. And I think it's really, really nice, and it really makes you feel alive. And I wish we had this in Korea, because I think it's good for everyone. And bus drivers work hard everywhere. They sit for so long, and they don't get long enough break time, and they get caught up in traffic very easily. One thing I really liked about living in Madison, Wisconsin, is that it's super, super safe, and the public transportation is very clean. For example, compared to, honestly, Santa Ana, California. Then there's the underestimation of the size of the US. I think it really is important to point out that America is a big piece of land that is really, really big. And I've been in Wisconsin between October and April, which has been just cold most of the time. It goes down to minus 25 degrees Celsius or minus 20 Fahrenheit. And it's sort of unfathomable how cold it is, because unlike Korea, the buildings are sparsely distributed here, so there's nothing really stopping the wind. So next time, if I'm in the US, I hope I'll be in a warmer place. I'm really grateful that I learned that this time, especially as a person from a tiny country. One thing I have to mention is that I feel very blessed for not having many problems communicating. I'm genuinely happy about it, and I also thought a lot about growing up in environments where your mother tongue is not your dominant language. A lot of my friends are second, third generation North Americans, and I would say certainly every language is hard and it takes a long time to master a language. And I think it's largely a matter of time and the similarity between languages because, it's not just the smart people in Japan who can speak Japanese, and it means it requires training. But there are many people who settle down in the US who stop practicing and training once they find a stable place in the US and their linguistic understanding sort of plateaus. As a person whose mother tongue is not English, I also feel it deteriorates if I skip studying for a few days. So it kind of validated my theory that language learning is a largely time-taking process. What else would I have done if I had more time? I would go talk to the Amish if possible. I think they are really fascinating, and I would be interested in talking to cult preachers if I can find one in the US. And I wish I had more time to actually think about the American dream. And I think the American dream is sort of characterized as entrepreneurial success and promotion in workplace. But as we discussed at the beginning of this video, I think there are different types of success and dreams everywhere because no one gives you money and pats you on the back if you become a better friend or better family member, which is still a great success. You may not climb up the social ladder, but this ladder is just in a different form. Speaking of financial differences, I think access to quality healthcare, overall safety, and Engel index are the three factors I care about the most. I think everyone's familiar with the other two, but in terms of Engel coefficient, average American household spends 11% of their money on grocery and food, and it's 12% in Korea. And if you think about housing prices, etc., I think on average, these two societies can scale linearly in terms of consumer behavior and the quality of life, let's say. I actually want to end this video with what my plans are for the next chapter of my life. Over the last 6 months, I was in a state of being somewhat afloat. I had work, but I felt largely disconnected from the world I was in, and the lack of ties felt somewhat lonesome sometimes, but also extremely liberating. It's the feeling that I was having as I was confronting the world myself after long years of hiding behind work partnerships, friendship, and some other social relationships I've already built. And I think a good society, not at a nation level, but also as small as it gets, as school classes, military units, company departments, farms, or church level communities, should give as much opportunity as possible for people who are afloat. Then there's the question of, instead of thinking about what the world could offer, but thinking about what I could offer to the world as a person who is in direct touch with the world. So I originally thought that I would end this video by expressing regrets about not achieving that 140% or 150% in the dreams and fantasies that I did not reach, but I think I've extracted out two very important ideas that it would be pointless to not append to this video. First, the motivation and the creative force always emerge at the individual level. And there is the society allowing the birth of dreams, and grant that the prosperity of the US is predicated upon some key ideas like freedom, liberty, pragmatism, and other geographical factors. And they are the facilitators of human ingenuity, but the creative force lies in each person. That's the first idea. The second is similar to the first one, but every society has a different social ladder and different status system, let's say, because You don't become a good chef by shooting with better accuracy, but even in the deepest part of the maze where you find it pointless to be in, we can still find something extremely meaningful, even though it looks like the darkest valley with no exit. But the avenue is always open, so let's see if I can ignite what's inside me and express it fully in the next chapter of my life. I'm happy that I'm recording this so that I can come back to this point and ponder this again. And if any of my friends are watching, I love you all, and we'll see each other soon.